Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 283, I chat with Rikki Farr and Dawn North of Riva Audio about their new wireless portable speakers. So stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, recorded December 3rd, 2015. Episode 283, Riva Speaker Technology. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by Corning Optical Cables. Corning's incredibly durable Thunderbolt and USB 3-point optical cables are longer, thinner, lighter, and stronger. Enjoy up to $60 off select Thunderbolt and USB cables if you're in the US or Canada at corning.com/twit. And by Epson's new EcoTank printers. With Epson's line of SuperTank all-in-one printers, you can print thousands of documents without running out of ink. EcoTank is loaded and ready to print when you are. Visit epson.com/EcoTank to find out more. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek and editor of absforum.com. This week, I have two guest geeks on the show. One is a returning guest geek, Rikki Farr, the amazing music producer and promoter who has been on the show a couple times. He's the chairman and chief creative officer of Audio Design Experts and Riva Audio, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Hey, Rikki, welcome back.
Hey, Scott, welcome back to you and all your crew, your excellent crew in the studio with you.
Thank you. Yes, it is an excellent crew, no doubt about that. Also joining us today is Dawn North. He's the president and chief designer at Audio Design Experts and Riva Audio. Hey, Dawn, welcome to, glad you could be with us.
Hi, Scott. Happy to be here as well.
Thank you. Now, those of you who are tuned in live at live.twit.tv or logged into the chat room there or at irc.twit.tv can post questions for Rikki and Dawn, and I will pass along as many as I can. It helps if you put my name in the comment, my screen name, that is, Scott Wilkinson, no space between the two words, because then it comes up in a different color on my screen and my eye is drawn to it more readily. So, Rikki, let's start with you. In our last interview, where you talked about your career and meeting all these amazing musicians and producing the Isle of Wight Festival and so on, you mentioned your passion for reproducing music with all of its emotional impact intact. And that's really what I want to talk about today. I want to start by asking, how did that lead you to found Audio Design Experts, which is an OEM company that builds stuff for other people, and Riva Audio, which is the consumer end of the business? How did you get from being a music producer and promoter to founding an audio company?
Well, just to catalyze what you just said, I actually own the largest live touring audio company in the world, responsible for, in high season, approximately 44 concerts a week. Everything from Ozzy Osbourne to Barbra Streisand to Tom Petty to Lollapalooza to Nirvana to just a myriad of artists. Also 3 touring shows of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, etc. So we owned a huge amount of audio, but this was the live audio and the lighting for the concert productions. I then, when I realized I couldn't tour anymore because Rod Stewart and I had a soccer team and my neck got broken and I just got to... Yeah, that's all right. You know, you can't head the ball too hard and miss and hit the goalpost and expect to be.
You know, no, you can't. I agree.
But they did rebuild both my neck and the goalpost. Anyway, so it got to a point where I couldn't tour. But one of the things, and I got involved in building millions and millions of little USB speakers that were very successful with a myriad of companies like NEC, E-Machines, Gateway, Packard Bell. And I was building and designing all of those. And they were very successful because we knew speakers and we knew how to maximize performance out of like 2.5 watts. So we were packing those into the boxes, and it was a splendid business, but it really wasn't very interested. And then I met with William Wang from Vizio, and he was just getting started with Vizio, and I knew him from previous work with E-Machines and Gateway. And I said, those CVs sound like hell. And he said, well, what can you do about it? I said, well, let's come up with an idea. And I built a little box that we named Soundbar. In fact, it was the very first soundbar ever to be produced. Yes. And we started producing them, and I started building them. And we sold
under the Vizio name?
Under the Vizio brand, and we won 3 consumer awards. We won numerous awards, and we were very proud for what we built for the price, and people loved it, and well over 2 million people bought them. And then Vizio decided, as is their price manifest, cheaper, and none of us are gods to play with the laws of physics. And when you take this out and take that out, you then, you basically take the heart and the soul out. And I said, I can't do it anymore. And they went on to be very successful. And they're selling lots of them. But of course, they are not the audio products they were. But I don't think they really care. They just want the volume, and they want them attached to their TVs. And with that, they're being very successful. But so at this point, I stopped building them. But my company had built itself to some millions of dollars. And at this time, my company had partnered with Don's company. And I knew of Don from back in the day for Lollapalooza, and Barbra Streisand, when she was coming back after her 5-year hiatus, said, darling, I want some beautiful bass. Well, I'd heard about this 18-inch subwoofer with this NRT neodymium technology, and I searched out Don, and I searched out the company, and lo and behold was the chief engineer, and somebody that I met, and although a very different human from me, somebody I took to immediately because his passion for music and the infinitesimal detail that it takes there is a black magic to making great speakers, and there also has to come with a tremendous amount of training in physics and electronics and understanding the combination of certain materials, rare earth materials, handmade materials, and putting them together, because the transducer is the engine. That is what the ear is going to hear. And one of the things that was so frustrating for me was hearing, and this is how the company started, was hearing my children and my grandchildren listening to that music we talked about last week that was very, very close to me. And I saw Dark Side of the Moon being written in my warehouse in Marshalsea Road. I saw Rod Stewart the startings of down at the Rikki, which was my club, working out songs prior to going on stage, which became part of Atlantic Crossing. I saw I saw David Bowie when he was, Davy Bowie in the Seaman, playing bad saxophone and singing, starting to create in the mirror the hairstyle and, the makings of Iggy Stardust. I saw all that, and I know that everybody goes, wow. But at the time, we were just young guys thinking of new ways to entertain in this new colorful era of the 60s. Because you've got to remember, a war had not long finished, and everything was gray and black, and the world trying to get back on its feet. And then there's this whole new youth coming out from the war, and replenishing all of those beautiful people that were lost in the war. And they came and they added this color. Now, fast forward 50 years or 45 years, and I'm hearing my granddaughter and my grandson and my son and my daughters, my 2 sons and daughters, listening through these little boxes, this music that was close and very dear to my heart. And it sounded absolutely horrible. And it bore no remnant. There was no recognition to what I'd stood in front and heard. I heard Paul Kossoff write that riff for All Right Now, and that 3 up bar stroke on Wishing Well. and then Paul Rodgers putting that fabulous white blues R&B voice to it. And then I'm hearing it coming through this little constipated tube that's totally distorted that song. And I felt that this was a treason. I don't want to be dramatic and say the song's being raped, but yes, if it was a physical event, it would be rape. They've taken that thing and with no regard for the nuance, the beauty, the emotion, the actual dynamics of this wonderful song and the lyrics and the expression of those lyrics. No regard for that. How can we shove it in a little box and put out this crappy facsimile of it and say, hey, kids, you got Bluetooth? Well, hell no. No, no, no. This boy don't play that. So when I said, what do I do? And I know my talents are limited to what I do. I needed to have a world-class team. If this was going to be a racing team, we had to have what is needed for a racing team. Excuse me. And Don North came to mind because I was working in proximity to him, and 4 or 5 other people came in mind. And we said, look, there's the challenge. And we need to do this differently. And by differently, we need to think, all of these things are single source. But we understand lifestyle is going in that direction. So let's not be old fools and just say, no, the old ways were the best. Stand by our memoirs. Let's say, let's take the modern lifestyle and come up with a way. And I told Don, one of the things that was my claim to fame with my live sound, with the huge roster of acts that I was servicing in live concerts, from anything up to 500,000 plus to large theaters, no clubs, we'd grown beyond that. And we created a thing, what we call triad, where we place a center column, a left column and a right column, and then Brooks Siren delays down the hall. And the engineer used to blend with the Soundcraft board because he had 12 channels that he could adjust to each speaker. They did this quilt of sound with the vocal coming down the center, but it spread. And Don was listening as he does, and I could almost hear the cogs working. And he said, well, I actually have been working on something similar to that, but in a different formula. And I think it was about a month and a half later, and we'd moved to a new premises. And he came in and said, what do you think of this? And he said, what if we took Bluetooth, cleaned it up, got all the fur off it and all the fuzzy bits, rewove it in the way that we mix it into 3 strands, and take the stereo signal and mix it into 3 strands, and then send it out as clean and as clear and as truthful through 3 channels, which will now give you the effect like you got in the live concert of the artist in the center, the band around, and also give you a sense of positioning of where the musicians are. And frankly, and Don will be the first to tell you, there was many, many, many hours spent in the lab trying and failing and getting it and losing it, and then trying and failing and then getting it. And then finally, Nirvana, Don had, and I think it was at his home over a weekend, he was so frustrated by us not getting there. He called me and he said, I think I've got it. And he came in on the Monday and we sat down and played it. And I looked at him and I realized that we were on, as the Moody Blues would have said, a threshold of a dream. It wasn't there 100%, but we could feel it. Then we needed to have the transducers, the drivers, specially built.
Before you get there, you're running along here and doing great. I love all this information, but I want to get Don in on the conversation too, just to ask him what. I assume that Rikki is accurately representing sort of the initial ideas. Where did you come from? Clearly, you seem somewhat younger than Rikki, so you maybe weren't there at that time. Shh, yeah, quiet. I mean, you know, I'm an old guy. I can say, but what was your background, your musical background? What kind of music did you like to listen to? What is your technical background? How did you come to this happy meeting?
Sure. So I'm 42 right now. I'll be 43 in a few days.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. You know, I grew up in the 80s in Central California, listening to a lot of pop music, a lot of the 80s new wave and heavy metal at the time. So that was kind of a lot of my interests, along with records my parents had growing up. And from a young age, I've always been interested in engineering, mechanical, the way things work, and especially with sound, how things sound, how to make sound, and all the nuances. And so that's always been kind of a very curious interest of mine. And so I went off to college to study engineering at Caltech in Pasadena in 1990. And while I was there, I started experimenting more with audio. I spent all my free time and money growing up playing with the stereo, buying things, and trying to make my stereo better and better to enjoy the music I had more. And in college, I got to expand on that further, doing some independent research project courses, from everything with binaural recordings, creating my own different types of dummy heads, trying to see how accurate, lifelike it needs to be, to and when played back through headphones, how it can be as realistic as it can, to doing simulation for how the baffle shape of a dipole speaker affects the frequency response of a speaker, and room interaction. So I've been really interested that way, and spent a lot of my time in school as well as my free time pursuing audio. And so when I graduated in '94, I thought it would be really fun to see if I could get a job designing loudspeakers. So I had sent my resume all over the country. At the time, the country wasn't in a good economic shape, and I even sent it overseas. And I got my first bite with Boston Acoustics, and so they were looking for a transducer engineer. So I packed up and moved from California back to the East Coast, and was working with Boston Acoustics for a while, and learning all the ins and outs of transducers design, which was really fascinating because my experience up until that point had been primarily on the system level with designing crossovers and enclosures and how things work in a room. So that was really fascinating to start learning from the transducers, from all the different materials for the cones, the voice coil, the magnetic structure, the bobbins and the glues, and how all that affected the bandwidth and performance of the transducer. From there, I moved out to back to California and worked for many years with a company called Aura Sound, who was famous for their high-end 18-inch probe woofer, and that's what Rikki was very fond of for his touring business. And I worked on all sorts of transducers, again, for home audio to car audio. I invented the small 2-inch transducer and patented it that you see in a whole host of products, from the big Macintosh XRT loudspeaker products. It was also used in the original Monster Beats boombox. I've done transducers that are in legacy audio, the Ford GT supercar that came out in the mid-2000s. So I've done a lot of different types of transducers and systems over the years, and it's always been trying to see how can we make it better, more lifelike, more like the real recording, and not have any of the dynamic compression or just lots of detail that you hear in so many products out there.
Sure. Now, iPhone 24069 in the chat room is picked up on something Rikki said a little while ago about Bluetooth, and taking away the fuzz or the lossiness of Bluetooth. And so, do you guys actually use? Is there a lossless form of Bluetooth that you use? I mean, there's ADX, or I forget now the name of the profile that's the highest quality. Can you address this question a bit?
Sure. So we support what you're thinking of is called aptX, APTX.
aptX.
Exactly. So aptX is a codec that's developed and owned by CSR, Cambridge Silicon Radio, in the UK. And aptX allows for a person to stream up to CD quality lossless. So it is compressed but then uncompressed, but you will be able to do true CD quality sound over Bluetooth if you want. Going back to Rikki's points about some of the fuzz, what we noticed when we were starting out thinking about creating a compact speaker in this category was we did a lot of listening and a lot of thinking. And I noticed that a lot of the other products in this category, they do so much processing to the sound. When you hear about compression nowadays, you're always thinking about, oh, it's either data compression or bandwidth compression. But a lot of these products are also doing dynamic range compression. They're making everything sound loud and homogenized and just kind of very one-dimensional. And that's not in the original recording. That's something that a lot of these products are doing. And so when we actually were starting the development, we started very simple, very purist, and we're streaming in the content. I would take my CDs and rip them 320K and then into MP3s and then stream them from an iPhone or an iPad in and listen to it. And we go, wow, that sounds actually pretty darn good. And then start continuing to work on the amplifier design, the transducer design, the mechanical enclosure design of how to get the maximum fidelity and resolution and dynamics as we could from the speaker. And so a lot of it comes down to taking our roots and experience from his big PA systems to my high-end hi-fi area of experience and applying that to these compact speakers and again trying to reproduce it as authentically and as accurately as we can.
Well, and we're going to get into exactly how you are doing that with your current products. But for a moment, let me give you a break and take this moment to thank one of our sponsors for this episode, which is Corning Optical Cables. Now, on this show, as you know, we take high-end gear very seriously. And Corning has transformed the traditional USB and Thunderbolt cables from plain old copper into incredibly durable fiber optic speed demons. Now, the holidays are fast approaching, as we all know all too well. And what better way to support the video file or audio file in your life than by giving them Thunderbolt and USB 3-point optical cables by Corning? Corning's optical cables are so flexible you can bend them, walk on them, even tie them in a knot, and they still keep transmitting at top speed. Check it out. I've got this 3-point optical cable tied in a tight knot. It is, in fact, feeding my printer, and it continues to work even with such a tight knot in it. It's really quite amazing. Speaking of speed, Corning fiber optic cables provide incredible data rates of up to 20 gigabits per second for Thunderbolt and 5 gigabits per second for USB 3. No other cable comes close. Another interesting fact is that Corning optical cables are 50% thinner and 80% lighter than traditional copper cables. Corning optical cables have exceptional cable runs of up to 60 meters or 200 feet for Thunderbolt and 50 meters or 165 feet for USB 3. Whether you're into high-end video, audio, photography, production, or computing, you want the best, most reliable cables out there. You want Corning optical cables. Corning optical cables are longer, thinner, lighter, and stronger. This holiday season, give the tech lover in your life the gift of premium fiber optic cables and treat yourself in the process by receiving up to $60 off select Thunderbolt and USB cables if you're in the US or Canada at corning.com/twit. And we thank Corning very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. So we've heard a little bit of how Rikki Farr and Don North came to the point where they are now with a company called Riva Audio. And out of all of their work, designing speakers, building transducers and amplifiers and so on, all from the point of view of wanting to recreate the music that is played out of these speakers as accurately as possible, they came up with a couple different portable speaker products. This is the category that they've been working on. And we have a picture of them called Riva products. I think we can pull that up and show those just to give people a sense of what it is we're talking about. And there are basically two models here. Don, why don't you take us through these models real quick?
Sure. So the larger ones you see at the rear is the Turbo X. That's our first product we introduced at the beginning of this year. That's a high-performance mobile Bluetooth speaker. All of our speakers, the Turbo X and then the smaller ones beside it, the Riva S, feature our patented now Trillium technology. So as Rikki was describing earlier, we have the 2-channel stereo incoming signal that goes through an algorithm we developed, which we named Trillium, which upmixes the 2 channels into 3 channels, and we reproduce those 3 channels through a left-facing speaker, a forward center-facing speaker, and a right-facing speaker. And so we do this on both the larger Turbo X as well as the smaller Riva S. And then to help support those 3-octave speakers, we have 2 passive bass radiators on the front and 2 on the rear. So there's actually a total of 7 transducers all around making sound. And when you listen to the speakers in the room, you get a very wide and deep sound field, more similar to what you would normally associate with a traditional hi-fi speaker than a little kind of plastic speaker box, which kind of shouts at you from some of the others. So the
we actually have a picture of the Trillium, a diagram anyway of the Trillium concept, how it works, called Riva Trillium. There it is.
There you go. Exactly.
So yeah, you got 2 speakers, one facing left, one facing right, and one facing center. And I guess this algorithm that takes 2 channels and moves them into 3. Can you describe a little bit more about what that does?
Yeah, so that algorithm is basically taking the information that's already in the stereo recording, and it's just reprocessing it and adding and subtracting and manipulating it to create a kind of a virtual left-right speaker outside the box. So when you are listening to it, you do hear a left to right stereo pan. You do hear the depth of the sound field, and also you don't have the normal comb filtering like you do with the traditional pair of speakers, where in tight sweet spot where you have to be specifically set here and here, and you have to sit, kind of like equal distance between them to get the nice big sound field. But the minute you go off axis, everything kind of collapses and you start hearing just one speaker louder than the next. With the Trillium processing and how we're reproducing it with our products, you can actually sit on axis or off axis. You get a nice wide sound field, and the vocals are always still locked to the speaker. So it's especially beneficial for watching movies and playing games as well as listening to music.
Mm-hmm. Rikki, does this small little speaker come anywhere near approaching what you were doing with the 3 channels in a live sound application?
Dimensionally, one is a propeller, a beautiful Merlin engine, small propeller plane, like a Spitfire.
Mm-hmm.
The other is a jet engine. If I'm doing, excuse me, Guns N' Roses in Metallica live at JFK Stadium, Washington, I got 72,000 people in there. On either side of the stage, I have 4 high, 20 wide, right? 4 high, 20 wide, with 2 18-inch woofers in each cabinet getting 1,500 watts. Okay, up above. Basically, I've got a 240,000 watt PA. That, if you stood within 50 yards of that PA, it could truly give you a haircut. So it's a totally different animal. One is to project over 3/4 of a mile this incredibly muscular rock and roll sound. The Rivas are designed to take all of that music. And I have, I mentioned it to you. I did the Pope in Ireland for over 1 million people. And God help you, listen, an angry rock and roll crowd is nothing compared to an angry Irishman who can't hear the good Father speaking. If they can't hear the Father, I want to talk to the sound fella. And I wouldn't be here to talk to you or even have a pint of Guinness. The thing is, different animals, but I've had shows with the Pink Floyd, like in Venice, with Tony Budstone on the board mixing on a Kelsey and Morris board, and getting the quality of the sound live, because you've got wind and you've got air and you've got mic noise and you've got mic bleed, you've got drums going and all sorts of things. And people don't like to use noise cancellation into the microphones because you get that clip-clop sound. But what we've been able to do, and as I said last week, and Don and I we're very, as you can see, we're very different. We're different ages, but we are, I would say, even closer than brothers, because there is a passion, a blood running in us that is so similar. It's almost like one of those cables you were promoting earlier. We both share these high-speed cables in our blood, and we are so, it's almost creepy where I'm thinking something and he's thinking something and one of us says it and it almost comes out of our mouths at the same time. So that's that rare occasion. And I don't want to be pompous and say it's like, Jobs and Wozniak or Hewlett and Packard, but we are going to make that sort of difference in the audio world. We're absolutely convinced of it. And that's just not arrogance. I appreciate, you do appreciate that I've worked with these artists that are comparable to that size in the world. And so I'm able to meter. But I believe that Trillium makes such a difference to what is now becoming the staple method of lifestyle, singular speaker, producing with the minimum wires, this music streaming. Just be on record, and this I can have Christine sent to you. Just in this quarter, 1,486 million streams in the first quarter of this year.
Wow.
God knows what the whole year is.
Oh,
now,
man.
Yeah. I mean, there is, what is it? It's like 20 million hours of streaming a week. Where's these people coming from? So like I said to you before, the engine in the front, these radio stations, these streaming devices and the radios and the titles and all of these, large corporations go, woo, radio station, the new station of the future, the new music. They're all jumping onto the engine to push that music out. But nobody's really thought about, until us and a few others, but us in the mainstream, has thought about the exhaust pipe. What's actually coming out of the end? There's got these engines roaring away with these different stations. Then what is coming? If you don't have the right exhaust pipe, you know how bad an awful exhaust pipe sounds. It's horrible. Yeah. So what we've done is we have developed from these big engines in the front, and there's multiple. We've developed this process to have this tailpipe that just sings like a Ferrari or a Maserati or a Jaguar F-Type, that real purr of exquisite performance. And I'm a Welshman, and I'm being a little poetic and lyrical, but allow me that right. That when we sit and listen, we sit and listen to our work, we look at one another, and without saying it, we know we can do better. And that's why I promised you on the last show, and I know Donald promised you on this show, that even though the industry and the media are absolutely hailing, here we are the new Caesar of Bluetooth, we're very grateful for that, and we are very humbled by it. But you ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, we're just learning so much about ourselves. And I've come from giant PAs down to little boxes, and Don has come from the lab and the physics rooms and, fine art music and testing timbali tones and, very esoteric but very unique methods of taking signal source of sound and centralizing it. And we know, the both of us with our team, we know that we're onto something. And what we're building now, even though, and please, thank you, keep writing, and everybody's, the wonderful, kind words. I mean, Forbes magazine, it was almost embarrassing what they wrote. We just won Editor's Choice in Innovation and Tech magazine. It's coming. We just, it's media tech. We're just winning a lot of awards and getting incredible kudos. And frankly, we wouldn't be on this program with you if we hadn't been coming to your attention. So as a very young company, we're still a baby. We're getting, and I think this is and I'll give you more. I'm taking up Don's time, and I apologize. But the reason we're getting this attention is that we know we're good, but we're far from great. Great is coming. That I promise you. We promise you that. But we're good. Far from perfect.
But, yeah, and I've heard the speaker myself, and I have to say it is very good.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So, and thank you. But think about it. The plaudits and the laudits that we're getting, which at times are somewhat embarrassingly good, it just tells you that people are so hungry or so thirsty for something that gives them back that truth, even though we haven't hit 100% of it yet, but it gives them a much larger percentage of the truth than this whole bandwidth of mediocrity. So in other words, we've popped out, sort of like a phoenix out, a phoenix out of the ashes, or like whatever you want to call it. And they've gone hallelujah and are probably giving us more enthusiasm than we really deserve. We'll deserve it later, but we deserve, because it's like a bucket of fresh air. Hell, I was playing Heavy Weather, and it's again a group that I toured with and loved Zal, and I loved, the whole, Jaco Pastorius. And I'm listening, in Heavy Weather, and it's that downscale, and Jaco's playing do-do-dun, 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 do-dun, and you hear the wind chimes. Pring. You don't hear them on any of these other things. But there's such a transition then to go to the Kurzweil, where he plays that half tempo. And you miss all that. You don't hear that. But you do with the products that we've been brought to life. And that gives us here the sort of recharge to know that we're getting there. We've found the path. We've found this really niche route to go. Trillium has really started to deliver us everything we dreamed of. We're polishing Trillium right now. The fact that the patent office recognized it was unique enough from anything in the world to grant us a worldwide patent is tremendous for us, because what's going to happen. Other people, these large corporations are going to see it and say, ooh, we want a piece of that. And let me say to them as a Welsh Viking, don't touch my Trillium. You touch my Trillium, I break your corporate face. I break your corporate face with my mighty axe of Farr.
Okay, well, listen, let me get back to Don for a second here. I Am Special in the chat room is asking a few questions that I would love for you to answer. First of all, let's make sure everyone's on the same page. His first question is, so they have 6 speakers inside?
So there's actually a total of 7. There are 3 active and 4 passive. So on the back of our product and on our webpage, you can see an exploded view of our product.
Which we actually have a picture of here. We can show you right here on the stream. If we pull that back, we can either see there's the exploded Turbo X is the larger one.
So the speaker on the far left that you see, that's the left channel, left-facing speaker. Then on the front, in the center, you have a center driver. And then the rightmost speaker you see exploded out is the right channel. So those are the 3 active channels. And then on the front, flanking to the left and the right of the center driver, are 2 passive radiators on the front, and immediately behind it on the back and equal and symmetric are 2 more radiators. So there's a total of 4 passive radiators working equal and opposite direction to balance the force and to help increase the overall piston area so that we can reproduce the deep bass as dynamically as we can.
So obviously in the cabinet you have the passive radiators are acoustically connected to the back wave of the active drivers, right?
Correct, exactly. The 4 passive radiators are working together with the 3 active drivers in a tuned resonance system to help reproduce the bass. And because it's a small enclosure space with these active drivers and passive radiators, it's very tight. And so when you look inside how we build it, all the wiring has to be run very precisely down the center. There can't be any deviation from it because the passive radiators will run into it. The way we do our passive radiators is a little different than some of our competitors. We're not just taking a diaphragm with a surround suspension and attaching it to the front of the enclosure and calling it a day. We actually have a frame, a bobbin, a spider, as well as a surround, because we need to have these passive radiators act as pistonic and as stable as we can and work in unison in concert so that they can work equal and opposite directions and just reproduce this big bass sound. And together with the 3 octave drivers, the product is very balanced force in the configuration. So there's actually very little vibration energy coming from the speaker itself. It just wants to kind of stay in its place and just let all this energy transfer as sound into your room.
Mm-hmm. I Am Special is also asking, do you have processor-controlled crossovers or simulated effects? Anything along those lines?
So all the equalization and the Trillium algorithm is all done in the digital domain. We do that all in-house. We develop that. We aren't doing any type of compression other than in the turbo mode. So when you take it out of the box, plug it in and start playing it, there's no compression or processing whatsoever other than the Trillium algorithm and the equalization to get the right tonal balance. Only in the turbo mode do we add a smart bass compressor to protect the speakers from overexcursion at the lowest frequencies below around 130 hertz, where they're moving the most. We designed them in-house to have as much excursion and dynamics as possible, but everything has its limits. These are only 60 millimeter transducers. They're not 12-inch woofers. So
Right.
we developed the turbo mode such that if you really do want to crank it up indoors or especially outdoors where you don't have any reinforcement of the sound, then you can put it in turbo mode. You can play up to 100 dB, and then we have the smart bass compressor only watching the extreme low frequencies to protect the speakers from overexcursion and damage. But from 130 on up, so you have all the mid bass, mid range, and treble. That's still wide open, and it's going to be as dynamic and uncompressed as we can do it.
It's quite amazing that you can get to 100 decibels of output in this turbo mode. I mean, I assume that's dBA.
That actually measured that dBc in the room.
It's dBc in the room. Okay.
Yeah. But that's 1 meter in the room. And of course, it depends on the type of music because we aren't doing the type of dynamic range compression and making everything loud. So some recordings will be coming through louder and hotter than others, but you're going to hear it as authentically as we can. We developed the amplifiers to have very high peak power because you need high peaks to be able to reproduce the dynamics along with the transducers. And we also developed a great mode called the surround mode that you'll see the S button on the top. The surround mode is a further advancement of the Trillium algorithm and expands the sound field a little bit wider and a little bit deeper. So it's especially fun if you're trying to watch a movie either from your tablet or using it as a mini soundbar with your television at home or playing games. That also sounds great with acoustic music like jazz and classical. So it really does fill the room nicely.
The other question from I Am Special, another question, is what is the frequency response or the frequency range that can be reproduced? I assume it'll go up to 20 kilohertz, more or less. But how low will it go?
So the Turbo X, we rated at 60 hertz to 16 kilohertz. And then on the Riva S, we'll go from 60 hertz up to 20 kilohertz because they're smaller transducers. We can get a little more high frequency extension and dispersion out of them. Both of them have about the same low frequency extension of 60 hertz. It's just that on the Riva S, because it's smaller 40 millimeter transducers, we have to start engaging the bass compressor a little bit sooner to protect the speakers from overload. Whereas on the Turbo X, because they're larger, we can play louder and go up to 100.
Muchacho has been asking in the chat room about using 2 units for stereo. Seems to me you wouldn't need to. I mean, you've designed this thing to actually create a stereo sound field from a single box. Is there any reason to think about using 2 of them for a stereo system?
So that is a feature that we have thought about and actually do incorporate in the Riva S. Like you said, the Turbo X is a very powerful speaker on its own, and it has pretty much no problem filling most rooms beautifully with sound or music, movie soundtracks. But for the little Riva S, it is actually fun to be able to link 2 of them up where you can have true left-right stereo, again, either wired in with your television as a soundbar, or you can stream in via Bluetooth, or you can also use the aux in the phono mode and have it in left-right stereo. So again, it's just going to enhance the imaging further and, of course, increase the dynamic range.
Right. Well, we got a lot more to talk about, but before we do, let me take another moment to thank our other sponsor for this episode, which is Epson. Epson's revolutionary EcoTank line of printers for home and office introduce a new age in printing. The new EcoTank ET4550 wireless all-in-one printer doesn't use ink cartridges. Instead, it features an innovative refillable ink tank. It comes with enough ink to print up to 8,500 pages, equivalent to about 50 ink cartridge sets. You're loaded and ready to print for up to 2 years. Powered by Epson's leading-edge precision core technology, it delivers high-speed, vivid colors, and laser-quality black text, plus auto two-sided printing, a 30-page auto document feeder, and easy wireless printing from tablets and smartphones. All EcoTank printers deliver an unbeatable combination of convenience and value with ultra-low-cost replacement ink bottles. Now you have the freedom to print without running out of ink. Visit Epson.com/EcoTank today to transform the way your home, office, or work group prints. For the best combination of ease and value, turn to the new Epson EcoTank printers. That's epson.com/EcoTank. And we thank Epson very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. Epson, exceed your vision. So I've got a couple more questions here.
Not to interrupt.
Oh, sure.
Don, you're in another part of the building. Make a note. We should check on one of those Epsons. That looks like a very cool thing to have in our lab with digital colors.
Yep. Extremely cool. Extremely cool. And with having so much more ink than you normally get, you can just print and print and print. It's really quite amazing.
Well, Epson should bloody well give us one for all this chatting, but I think we'll have to buy it just to keep it kosher.
I probably need to keep it kosher. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Beatmaster in the chat room is asking, they mentioned the use for gaming. Isn't Bluetooth problematic because of the lag or delay? Don, you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do support aptX, and aptX does have a lower latency than some other types of Bluetooth. So it just depends on your type of source whether your tablet can support aptX. If so, like some of the Android devices do, then you should be able to use it and have a pretty good gaming experience. We've also actually are going to be introducing very shortly a Bluetooth dongle that you'll be able to hook into your television and transmit the audio from your television either via the optical input or the analog input to your Turbo X and your S on your coffee table. And again, that supports aptX as well so that we can have as low latency as we can.
Okay, cool. Let me see here. One of the things that I found interesting in perusing your website is your recommendations for positioning this speaker. And we have a picture actually of a couple different possibilities for placement positions. It's called Riva positions there, if you want to pull that up. And Rikki, maybe you can talk a little bit about what these positions called number one here are the most recommended because you're sort of in a corner. You don't want to be directly in the corner, but you want to be kind of near a corner. Or the second idea would be up against a solid surface, not exactly touching it, but some distance, a little bit away from it. And finally, the last choice would be out in the middle of the room. Rikki, what do these positions do for the sound? How do they help the Turbo X and S achieve their highest potential, shall we say?
Okay, it's actually simply two words: reflective surfaces. The way that the Trillium is designed and having the speakers and the reflective energy of the radiators, and as Don was talking to you earlier, we do use our passive radiators as a passive base wall. I mean, they're a speaker without electronics fired into it. So it is acting exactly like its brother and sister, so that, just like a butterfly wing, they're all in concert. It's almost gossamer. And by doing that, you have this way, there's no steps or gaps in the air, and you're getting this this whole lung working in and out together. So when you have speakers completely around you, especially to the left and the right, and you've got, as I said, these three braids of stereo mixed into three electronic outputs, electronically outputted through three speakers, you're going to be having obviously what you call dispersion. Now speakers go from 15 to 30 to 45 degrees off axis, and when those hit and go to the reflective surfaces, they ricochet back into the room, not in a harsh way. It just basically is like if you're filling the room up with water from one corner of the room, and that will run to everywhere as it starts to fill the room up. So the benefit is of putting it in a corner, you're going to get the benefit of the energy of those radiators, and that is going to reflect off the wall. And it's always, if you take a bass box and put it on a concrete floor, or if you put it on a solid foundation, you'll get a much better sub-bass transference. We do this by using the reflections of the wall. So if you take the speaker and put it in a corner, you're going to get a much enhanced bass. Some people prefer it to be a little less, so they'll put it with just a flat surface behind. Or some people will just take it in the nude, so to speak, and put it in the center of the room. And I prefer to just put it on a shelf about 6 inches away from the wall, and my living room is it's over 55 by 40, and with a 9'6" ceiling, and I put it in the one corner. And I have some pretty nice equipment in my house, as you can imagine. That is all my wife and I listen to now, because we're able to run it at a certain level where all of the nuance is reflected. And we give people this choice. Now, some people who want a lot of bass, or shall we say enhanced bass, it's not being done electrically, it's being done reflectively. And that's why we've given a guide. So people can put it in the corner and say, wow, I love that. That's giving me tons of this. Or they can put it in front of the TV or against the rear wall behind them and get slightly less weight of the bass, or put it in the center of the room and let the little beast do its work, and does it very, very well.
Now, Digmax in the chat room is saying those positions, particularly in the corner, will reinforce the bass, but I would think it would mess with the imaging.
It doesn't, but Don, I'm doing all the talking. Don, you're better than me on this. Do you want to fire up on that?
Sure. So we developed that guide to help educate the consumers and the end users about room placement. This is, of course, your viewers are very more experienced with room placement and know that where you position the speakers in the room and how you do it has a huge influence on the sound experience. And so we included this in the guide to help kind of guide people who had no understanding of that. You know, if you move it near a wall, you are going to get some reinforcement of the bass. You're also going to help expand the perceived sound field. And then move into the corner of the room. Again, you're going to take advantage of the room acoustics and the eigen modes and get even more extended bass. But as far as the sound field, it still works very well in the corner as well. Again, because the speaker is so small, you can easily move it around the room and find the best place for you. And so when we do a lot of our demonstrations at the shows, we'll actually set it up in the corner, and it's just amazing just how wide and deep and powerful the sound is from this little box the size of a piece of bread in your home.
So what's the deal with vinyl, with a turntable input to this thing? I was wondering, is it a moving magnet or a moving coil input? How do you manage to accept a signal from from a turntable rather, into this little portable speaker?
So the inspiration for including a phono input was I've been collecting vinyl since the early 90s in college. I live in Los Angeles near Hollywood and go to Amoeba Music all the time to see what's new for releases. And I've been noticing that, number one, their vinyl section is getting bigger and bigger, both new releases and used recordings.
Isn't that amazing?
Exactly. And I'm also seeing people of all ages, not just, you know, middle-aged on up, but I'm seeing teens, 20-somethings, 30-somethings all buying vinyl. And as I look around, I'm seeing people also buying turntables. There's some new models out there that are very affordable that have a built-in phono preamp. And so I thought, well, let's accommodate these turntables. And so I created a software Easter egg kind of code, which allows you to take a turntable with one of these built-in phono preamps, or you can take a traditional turntable with a separate phono stage, and you plug it in. Now, the output from these turntables is still much less than a traditional CD player or DVD player. And so I created this phono mode, which adds anywhere from 6 to 9 dB of gain to help make up for the low signal level from the turntable. But I also configured the analog input to bypass the automatic gain control function of the analog input, so that, again, there's no possible dynamic range compression. So it's only optimized for low signal level analog signals, like from a turntable, and it's going to give us the best sound you can. But you do need to have a signal that has been gone through a preamplifier and the RIAA equalization.
So you still need that, but but there are turntables you can buy today that have them built in, or use an outboard phono stage.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Tell us a little.
In fact, if not to interrupt, but if you go and shop at Whole Foods, I mean, I was blown away. I'm shopping in Whole Foods Thanksgiving, and I turn around the corner, and they've got a whole island, a whole selection of vinyl.
Really?
Yep.
Wow, I've seen CDs in Whole Foods. I don't think I've ever seen vinyl. That's amazing.
They have vinyl, and they have a deck for sale. Not a very technically upward one, but it's you know, I mean, it's something that the mother will buy for herself or her children. But they have a very good collection of vinyl.
Wow. I was going to ask you in the few minutes we have left to tell us a bit about the development process. And I saw a picture, I got a picture from Christine, that has it's a picture of your sound room, where you have a microphone and a driver in a sort of a baffle kind of a thing. If we can show that, I'd love for you to say a few moments of sort of the development processes. This looks like, it's not an anechoic chamber exactly, but it's a well-treated room, I would think, and you've got a very, very close mic'd situation there. What are we looking at here, and how does it relate to your development process?
So we develop everything in-house, starting with the transducers to the enclosures and everything. When we built out our offices a couple years ago, I wanted to have a really large sound chamber that we can use for testing of both transducers as well as systems. And with some of my previous jobs, especially like working at Harman, we had a large 4-pi anechoic chamber, which are really nice and can be useful, but they're also not very practical in everyday development and testing. And so I felt a big, large room like this, which I think is like 15-foot ceilings, 15-foot wide by 20 long, that gives us enough a time delay for the sound to come from the transducer or the speaker, and then travel through the air to the microphone, and it delays the amount of time before it bounces off the wall or the sidewalls or the ceiling. And then we have this large 4-inch thick recycled acoustic padding to really help deaden the room as much as possible. So it's a very versatile space and you see this photo here, we have our test baffle. In this case, it's a close mic of a transducer. We're going to be testing the transducers at various distances, on axis, off axis. We also have one of the clipple systems for testing the nonlinearities of the magnetics and the suspension of the transducers to, again, see how we can optimize them and make them as linear over as wide of a dynamic range as you can. And so our whole development process is very iterative. We kind of create an idea, do some proof of concept prototyping in-house with the enclosures out of wood or plastic, and then we take some transducers we have and see if the concept works. And then from there, we start refining the transducers further. We then start looking at the amplifier requirements. How much peak power do we need? How much voltage, current, what type of batteries? And then we just tune up the system, have a listen, and see, okay, well, where's the strong points and the weak points, and how can we make it better? And then we go back into the chamber, do some new measurements, go do some updates on the transducer or the magnetics, see how we can get more BL out of it, or get the moving mass down, or look at how the gluing is done on the voice coil. Every little detail on a transducer matters. It's really amazing that you can have these little speakers, or even a large one, and every part, while there may only be 10 or 15 parts, but the material construction, your choice of wires, all the gluing, all the geometries, everything affects the sound, and you can hear it. And it comes down to finding the right balance and optimizing it, which ultimately can only be done through extended listening.
Well, that was my next question. Was obviously you do measurements and you do subjective listening, so objective, subjective.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the relative the ratio of those two things? Do you do more objective measurement than listening, or more listening than objective measurement, or about the same?
Well, we start out doing a lot of objective measurements, especially with the transducers, from the frequency response and distortion perspective. And then once we have the transducers in the enclosure, I'll take it into the chamber and I'll do some preliminary tuning of the DSP through measurements, again, on axis and off axis. And once I get it to a point where I feel like this is ready to go to the next level, we'll then take it into one of our listening rooms, including my office, and start playing a variety of different types of music, and note how does it perform with this track and that track at this volume level and that volume level. And we'll see, yep, that note stood out a little bit too much, or I'm hearing a little something funny here, and we'll make note of it. And sometimes you can see it on the graph. It may have been a little blip that you're more easily to hear, and sometimes it's not. And so we'll go back and forth. I mean, some of these products like the Riva S, I was literally working on the tuning for that speaker for almost 10 months. And just going back and forth, lots of listening, adjusting the settings, refining the transducers. We came to a point last spring when we thought we had the electronics done, the transducers done, and we sat down and gave it a good listen, and comparing it to the Turbo X. And Rikki and I said, that's not good enough. We got to revisit this and take a new look at it. And so we went back and looked at the transducers and see how we can get the magnetics and the suspension improved more. We looked at how we did the amplifier design and realized that we need more peak power to get the dynamics and the lifelike qualities that we want. And again, it's just going back and forth until we finally say, this is as good as we can get it right now. We're really proud of this, and let's bring it to people.
Very good. Very good. Well, one last question. I'll start with Rikki. Obviously, you don't want to reveal any trade secrets or confidential information, but any hints on what we might expect next from Riva Audio?
Yes. In a nutshell, when we started the company, we said, let's try with the toughest first. And if we can establish a reputation and a respect in the industry, and certainly develop the basis of a niche business that financially is moving in the right direction. So we said, because we knew what we could do from studio monitors and things like that, but we want to get out to a lot of people. Remember, this started by hearing my children and grandchildren listening to crap. And so we said, let's challenge the toughest first. The most flooded market, nobody wants to hear the word Bluetooth. There's too much of it. And when you start seeing headlines in major magazines saying, Riva has finally cracked the Bluetooth code, buy this and not this, relevant to another multi-billion-dollar company, for our little company. And the sort of things that are coming out of Gizmodo and what's MidTech, the company just gave us Innovation and Tech Today, which is a substantial magazine, the editor said, this is my choice of a Bluetooth product. And when you have people doing this for you, you realize that we started out with the toughest course, the hardest market to get into. I mean, the head buyer at Best Buy said, there is no question this is the best Bluetooth speaker that I have heard. I just got to wait for shelf space. I'm overcrowded. The minute I've got shelf space, you're coming in. So we started with the toughest first, and I think we're really getting there. And the release of the new S is really getting some traction. And because of the price and everything, we're seeing some tremendous the Turbo X is selling steadily and wonderfully, and just how we thought it would. The S is really on the move. I mean, it's out 3 weeks, and we've already cleared our warehouse out twice. But the plan for this company was to take that singular insular lifestyle of a system. And all I will tell you, and I know Don will, I don't want to say too much, I've invited you to come to CES. We will be showing a audio system that available throughout the world that will be in 3 parts. That will be the Baby Bear, the Max Bear, and then something that we have tremendous experience with as we initiated them, soundbar. That will be cloud Wi-Fi. It will be Google Play, it will be AirPlay, it will be Bluetooth, and you can take it out of your house and take it wherever you want and play it, because portability and the products that you buy from us now, which are Bluetooth, will be, with a small addition, able to be part of that network. We will be the first in the world to introduce a multiplex of universal Wi-Fi that will have the Riva sound from Trillium. And I will promise you this, Scott, and all of you good guys in the studio who are musos and love your sound, we won't let you down. This will be special.
Well, and I'm sure looking forward to it. CES is only a month away. And so I am looking forward very much to visiting with you there and finding out what you've got going on at the show. But for that, we have run out of time, I'm sorry to say. We've had a great hour here of conversation. I want to thank you both, Rikki Farr and Don North, for spending the hour with us. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. And thank you, Brother Don.
Same here, Rikki.
You can find out much more about the products that we've been talking about today at rivaaudio.com, R-I-V-A, rivaaudio.com. You can find me at avsforum.com. You can email me at scott@twit.tv, and you can follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott and at avsforum. And you can always find previous episodes of Home Theater Geeks right here on twit.tv/HTG and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit Home Theater Geeks. Next week, my guest geek is scheduled to be Bob Katz. He's a legendary recording engineer, and he's going to be talking with us about all his various thoughts about audio. And believe me, they're very interesting. So I hope you will join me for that. And I also want to let you know that 2 weeks from now will be the final Home Theater Geeks of the year. And I've got a very special guest lined up, none other than movie legend Douglas Trumbull, to talk about his amazing career in movie special effects and what the work he's doing these days in high frame rates and other advanced movie technologies. So I really hope you can join us for that, because it's really going to be quite interesting. Until then, geek out. Rikki, here's a question for you, not regarding this, but I Am Special is asking if you miss lava bread. And I don't know what that is. He says it's cooked seaweed.
Yes. No, I don't miss it.
Okay, I don't think I would either.
I don't miss it, but let me tell you, I've just come back from an extensive trip in Asia, and we were going for great celebration, and all the people involved in Riva. We came back and we went to banquets, and I'm eating things which I swear to God, I mean, they gave me this thing of jellied chicken feed, and then which I wouldn't eat, and then I had another dish. And I looked at it, and I'm prodding it, and it's like this big ball of it's looking like a jellified tennis ball, all furry and awful. And I asked them I said, well, what is this, if you don't mind me asking? And they said, oh, that's jellyfish. And I looked at them and I said, when I was 6 years old in the English Channel swimming, I was stung by a Portuguese man of war. Excuse me, I spent 4 days in Brighton General Hospital. I have a scar on my leg, and I'm not eating this damn thing, so please excuse me yet again.